Hello, welcome to another episode of Bville Live. I'm your host, Christina Neely. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a vegetable pie, or sometimes called a spinach pie, but today we're going to make it with greens and Swiss chard. A lot of people don't know how to prepare Swiss chard. Please don't be intimidated by strange vegetables that you've never used before. They're actually very healthy. A variety of vegetables is really good in your diet, especially greens, to improve your health. So the first thing you do when you do Swiss chard is you cook the stems first, and then you add the leafy greens next. So before we start cooking the Swiss chard, we need to get some oil in our pan. I like to use a bacon end when I'm making any kind of greens because it gives it flavor. So you're going to take this bacon end and you're going to chop it into fine pieces. You want to set your pan. Get a pan about this. You're going to need a fairly good sized pan. Turn the heat on to high and set it about medium high for your bacon. You don't want it to burn, but you want it to cook quickly so you can get your greens in the pot. So go ahead and chop your bacon up into fine pieces. For this recipe today, we're going to be using onions, garlic, carrots. I get everything fresh off the farm. I just got a delivery this week, and I'm really excited to be able to use all these greens. This is one of my family's favorites. They love my pot pies. You can make them with meat or without meat. If you don't want to use bacon, if you're vegan or you're vegetarian, you can just use olive oil to heat your greens up. You can skip the bacon part. If you prefer more meat, you can add chicken to this or turkey, whatever you want. But we're just going to use a little bit of bacon bits today and our vegetables. So go ahead and slice this up. As you can see, I have some saran wrap over my thumb. I had some minor thumb surgery earlier in the week, so I didn't want to get my bandage soiled. So you're going to just chop that up like that. And if you don't have bacon ends, I buy bacon ends mainly because they're cheaper. I had some in the freezer and I opened up the pack and trying to use it up. And since I knew I was getting all these greens, it's the perfect time to use them. I use them in omelets or when I'm cooking greens. Okay, so we're going to cook that up. Get our spoon and give that a little bit of a stir so it doesn't stick. The bacon ends surprisingly have a lot of meat on them, not a whole lot of fat. I like to turn this down to medium low. I don't want my bacon to stick to the bottom of my pan or burn. It's really for flavoring and take any bitterness out of the greens. Now, there's not a whole lot of fat in here. I can show you this once it cooks down. So it really just gives you enough fat so that your greens don't stick to the pan. And that's what you want. So while they're simmering, we're going to prepare our onions. I have a beautiful plate of farm fresh vegetables from Brady Farm. In this particularly delivery, I had white onions, carrots, and fresh garlic. I'm so excited to use it. And look at the greens. These are beautiful. Swiss chard, and there's mixed greens underneath. So I get to use all my farm fresh vegetables. They're all organic. Brady Farms is a local farm. It's an urban farm in Syracuse, New York. You can subscribe to their farm delivery packages. I'm in Baldwinsville, and they deliver up here. There's other delivery spots throughout the city. But they're wonderful people. It's a sustainable farm. The soil is fresh, and they teach people how to farm. It's a wonderful, so it's a win-win situation. So you're going to chop your onions up, and you're going to add those next to the pan. Your onions, your carrot. I'm not going to add the garlic yet because I don't want it to burn. Okay, and then for your greens, you're going to add your stems first. So when you're chopping onions, you cut it in half, and you see the natural lines in the onion. We're just going to follow those. Nature gives us wonderful guides to use. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. So I follow those natural lines, and then I cut across, and before you know it, you have a chopped onion. I know people say, oh, how do I chop an onion? How do you do it so quickly? Well, I just follow what God put in the vegetables to make it easy. And before you know it, you have a completely chopped onion. We're going to put that in the pan. And you can chop them up pretty quick. The easiest way to do it is to cut them in half, put them in slices, and then across. And chopping pretty much follows the same routine every time you do it. Slice it in slices and then across. These little onions are so sweet. They're not bitter at all. There's no bite to them, but they have absolute wonderful flavor, and they pair so well with the greens. And I'm going to put this in a pie crust shell and have it for our Sunday dinner today. And the wonderful part about when you make a greens pie is, you know, you only need a slice. It fills you up. We're going to add some cheese to this, and then I have it for the rest of the week. So I try and make my meals on the weekends. And since my son is a doctor, he's a cardiologist, and he's got irregular hours, I always need something that I can heat up in a hurry, that's nutritious, that he's going to like, and that he can get right back to work. So if he comes in and says, hey, I got to get right back to the hospital, I just take a slice of pie, heat it in the microwave for a minute or two, and he's got that with a quick salad. He had some beautiful good lettuce and white radishes that I'm going to make a salad with that we got in our basket, and then he's ready to go back. And it's a quick and easy meal. So you just make this ahead of time. And you know, if you don't have enough greens, or you used your greens for something else, you can use lettuce. I mean, you know, if you have mixed greens that you bought in a box, this is a great time to use them if they're starting to, you know, get a little bit wilted and they're not fresh enough for a salad. So after I put my onions in, I'm cutting up my carrots. Again, I cut it in half, in quarters, and then I add those quarters to the pot. So I don't know if you just heard my son, he yelled in the room, something smells delicious. So we're going to bake this up. We might even have it for an early lunch today. I have to go to a tea later today, so I might just have this for an early lunch. Oh, that's my son, Zach. Say hi, Zach.
Hi.
He's shy, camera shy. So we might have this for an early lunch today, and just have some vegetable soup for dinner. So to cook up garlic, well, I'm going to do the greens first. So we have our carrots and onions in the pan, and I'll bring this over so you can see it. And even though there was bacon in the bottom of the pan, you can see there's really not much in the way of grease in there at all. So always try and cook healthy. You don't have to use bacon. You can just use olive oil, which is usually what I use, but I happen to have the bacon. All right, so how do you prepare the Swiss chard? So if you notice on the Swiss chard, they have these stems, okay? And the stems can be a little bit on the tough side. So I'm gonna cut off all my stems first. So when I wash them, I grab them by the stem so I could cut those off first, because they take a little bit longer to cook. So I grab all my stems, put my greens aside, and then my other mixed greens I'm not going to worry about right now because I'll add those at the end. So a lot of people, you know, oh, what do I do with Swiss chard? They have no idea. But this is a real easy recipe. It uses a lot. And they actually make these in Greece if you travel at all. And you go to Greece and Italy. Spinach pies are big with feta cheese and eggs. We are going to use some of those ingredients today. But I kind of cut the cheese in mind to make it a little bit healthier. And I'm going to use fat-free cottage cheese with just a little bit of feta. That way you can cut back on the fattier cheeses. So just chop your Swiss chard into little chunks. About yay big, about a ½ inch to an inch. We're going to add that to the pot. And give it a good stir. Okay, and since I have the carrots in there and the stems, I'm going to let that cook up a little bit. So I'm going to turn my heat down, up a little bit to about medium-high. Okay, and then I'm going to prepare my garlic. Okay, so for the garlic, you take your bulb, take the back of your hand and your knife, and you're going to squash it, but I'm going to wipe this off so it doesn't slip. okay? And basically you squash your garlic like that and then you chop it. The reason that you do this is it releases the garlic flavor. That's why when you chew it, sometimes you get that bite to it. And if you do this, it flavors your whole pot of vegetables or whatever you're doing. It makes it easier to chop up as well. So this will cook about 30 minutes in the oven because you're pre-cooking all your vegetables. So it's a pretty quick meal. So I'm thinking I am going to have it for lunch today. My son was on last night and I know he's tired and he wants to take a nap. So this will be a nice meal. And it's been snowing up here, so it's perfect. And you can leave your garlic chopped coarsely. It doesn't have to be too finely chopped. It's nice to have something to bite into, especially because we're not using a lot of meat in this dish. I'm going to add that now. I have my stems in there cooking. And as far as your other vegetables go, your greens, you don't need to chop them up. They're going to cook down, and when you cut into the pie, I sometimes give them a little chop. Depends on how big they are, but I don't worry too much about that. So we're going to give them another quick stir with the garlic. And I'm going to add my spices now. The reason I'm adding my spices now is because once you get those greens in there, it takes up the whole pot, and sometimes it's hard to get your spices in. So we add some salt. I don't use a lot of salt. That's approximately a 1/4 teaspoon. Add pepper. That's about 1/8 of a teaspoon. I do add a pinch of red pepper to it. Fairly sizable. Pinch of red pepper flakes. Actually got these left over from the pizza shop, so I try and use them up. And then I use my favorites, which is going to be your ground turmeric. These are all really good for your heart. And that's about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of ground turmeric. You want to add cumin to that. If you don't have these spices, that's okay. You don't have to add them. I like them. I like the flavor that they make, and I also like the color. So that's cumin, paprika, turmeric, okay? And if you don't have onions and garlic, you can just use powders. I always keep those in my pantry just in case. All right, I'll show you what that looks like now. Okay, so our stems have cooked down, and next we're going to add our greens. Well, you're not going to be able to add all this at once, so what you're going to have to do is add it a little bit at a time. So since I have Swiss chard, I'm going to add that first, because that's going to take a little bit longer than my lettuce. So I don't even chop it up, I just put it in whole, and I'm going to fill my pot. And if I have some room in there, I'll put my mixed lettuce greens on top. And that looks like it's arugula, garden lettuce. Whatever you have on hand is fine. Greens are greens. They're all good for you. So I'm going to fill that pot. And I fill it, fairly full. So you can see that it's basically overflowing. And I'm going to give it a stir. Now you're not going to be able to stir much at this point. I kind of just smush it in there. And it goes down pretty quickly. You can see it already went down about 1/4 of a bag. I want to make sure I don't burn it enough. I'm saran wrap at the stove, so I'm going to wrap that up again. And as I stir it, it starts to cook down. So I'm mixing the garlic and the onions around in there. And the carrot. And remember, this is also going to cook down in the oven as well. Okay, so I have some more room in my pot to add some more greens. So I'm going to take another handful of greens, And there is some water in there, so if it doesn't evaporate, we'll strain it out. So you can see I used a full colander in there, and that's about what you're going to need. So if I had to estimate, it's going to be about 2 bags of greens, or if you get those plastic containers of greens, they'll probably take up most of that. Alright, so I'm going to put the lid on that. Turn it down a little bit so that what's on the bottom doesn't burn. And then I'm going to start preparing what I'm going to mix it with. Okay. So you're going to, I have, because of my thumb, I don't want to roll out pie crust. I'm going to use a pre-made pie crust. So I'm going to get that ready. And I have 2, one for the top and one for the bottom. If you want to roll out a pie crust, that's fine. They're actually healthier than the store-bought ones, but if you're in a hurry like I usually am, I just use these. So I save one for the top. I'm going to put it over by the stove so it defrosts a little bit. Take out the lining of this one and get ready to fill that. Okay, so at the bottom of the pie crust, whenever I'm making a pie that has a lot of greens in it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the bottom, I'm going to line it with something to absorb it, not a paper towel. But I had a little bit of stuffing left over from Thanksgiving, so I'm just going to dump that in there, okay? And this will absorb any of the greens liquid so that you don't end up with a soggy pie crust. So if you have rice in there, that's fine, you can add that. You don't have to, as long as you squeeze it out. So I'm going to set that aside, and then I'm going to get ready to mix my other ingredients. So while your greens are cooking, I have a strainer because I'm going to make sure that I strain out all that moisture so I don't end up with a soggy pie. So I'm using a clear bowl so that you can see what I'm doing. So you're going to get some cottage cheese. And I got a clean spoon. And while you're doing this, you're going to occasionally want to come over and check your greens. Turn them over so that the bottoms come to the top and the top goes to the bottom. And it does take a little bit of time. If it doesn't look like it's going down, turn your heat up a little bit. And they cook up fairly quickly. It doesn't take a really long time to do this. A lot of scratch cooking people say, oh, I don't have time for this. But you know what? By the time you order takeout and it gets here, you could have cooked a homemade meal from scratch using organic vegetables, which is a whole lot healthier for you. So I very rarely, never actually order takeout delivery. It's too expensive, too salty. You know, people think they don't have time, but if you have everything in your pantry and you just go to the grocery store once a week, or better yet, get a farm delivery like I do, you always have your vegetables available to cook with. And what could be better than that? So this is cooking down very nicely. Very, very nicely. So give that a stir. Okay, and then we're going to prepare the rest of our ingredients for the filling. So I'm just using low-fat cottage cheese for this. You can use ricotta cheese, you can use whole milk, whatever you want. I happen to just, I'm trying to cut calories and fat. You know, fat's not really good in your diet. A little bit is, but not much. I'm going to use half of the container. So this is a 24-ounce container, so I'm going to use about 12 ounces. So 8 ounces in a cup, so 8 from 12. You're left with 4 ounces, so that's a cup and a half of cottage cheese. And if you don't have a cup and a half to use, that's fine. Okay. And then to that, I'm going to add 2 eggs. And then I'm going to give it a stir. almost like how you make a lasagna. Now, in Greece and Italy, when they make a spinach pie, they just add eggs to the greens. They don't add cottage cheese. I'm cutting back on the eggs. I'm adding more of the low-fat cottage cheese. This is a new recipe. I wanted to try it out. Okay, and then also you don't have to use as much feta then when you do it this way. So feta is a goat cheese. It's really good for you. I like it. And if you can't tolerate dairy, you can skip the cottage cheese and just go with the feta. And I crumble it up. And I'm going to guess that this is probably about 4 ounces of feta cheese, about a half a cup. Not quite, but... And if you don't have feta, you can use Parmesan. You can use whatever you want. You could even use mozzarella if you wanted to. And make an Italian twist on it. All right, so I'm going to give that a stir. So in here I have my feta cheese, my cottage cheese, and 2 eggs. And then I'm going to mix my greens in when they're done. And we're going to pour it in the pie shell and bake it. All right, so let's take a look at our greens. And they are just about cooked down. So because I'm putting the bread in the bottom, I don't have to cook them all the way down. But you can see that they've reduced in size. And I'll show you what that looks like. So again, I have my bread on the bottom of the crust. I'm going to take my greens and strain them. And then I'm going to add them to my cheese mixture. Okay. We're going to put them through my strainer like this. Just let it drip onto the plate. You don't really need the colander, but I have it out from the greens, so kind of doing double duty there. And the juice that's left over, I'm just going to add to my soup. I have some vegetable soup in the refrigerator, and I'm just going to add that to it. It'll be delicious and it doesn't waste anything. Now you can also, the greens can stand alone as a side dish at this point. You don't need to make a pie out of them. I just like to do something a little special because it's Sunday. And I'm going to scrape most of it is in there. I really don't have that much juice in here. And there really wasn't much in the way of fat, even though we used the bacon. So, let's put that back in the pan. Put my juice on there. Clean that up. And then I'm going to press down. Okay, so I'm pressing to squeeze the juice out. You can see the greens give quite a bit of liquid off, and you want to press that out, get as much out as you can. And if you drop a couple of carrots in there and back again, that's fine. Okay, so I'm just going to add the greens to that, and I'm going to stir as I do that so I don't end up cooking up my eggs. And this is going to make for a really delicious pie. So as you can see, I'm mixing my greens with my spinach, with my cottage cheese and my eggs and feta. And that's going to melt together in the oven, and that is just going to be delicious. Flinging my cheese all over the place. All right. So now I have my crust that I've lined with the bread, and I'm just going to scoop this in. Now remember, these greens are still going to cook a little bit further down, so you want to really pile it in. The bread that I had left over from the stuffing will absorb any moisture and keep it from getting soggy. And you can mound that pretty high because we're going to put a top layer on it. Push that out of the way. So first I'm going to fan it out all the way to the edges. And I like a pie that's kind of has a nice mound on it. Okay, and then I'm just going to take this other crust and lay it right on top. I had it by the stove so it would defrost a little. Sometimes they give you a little bit of difficulty coming out of the shell, but if you kind of bend the shell a little bit and run your finger along the edge, usually that will drop out in one piece. If it doesn't, you can use a spatula to get the rest of that out. Okay, so your pie is mounded, and it doesn't matter if there's holes in the top. I'm telling you, once this is cooked, it's going to pull together and it'll look beautiful. So one of the things you do want to do when you're doing a pie is you want to put slits in the top. Okay. Now I'm kind of piecing that back together because it did crack a little and stick to the pan a little, but that's okay. So I'll just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and one in the center is 7. So that's what your pie looks like before it goes into the oven. And before I put it in a 350-degree oven, I'm going to put it on a pan. The reason I do this is so that if it overflows, and to add some support to those aluminum shells. You don't need to pinch the ends down. You can if you want, just a finger pinch is fine. But it looks like that, and it's heavy. So use 2 hands when you put it in the oven. You're going to set your oven to bake at 350 degrees, and because it's so big, I'm going to give it about 40 minutes. So I'm setting my timer at 40 minutes in 350 degree oven. And I'm going to check it in 30, but I think it's really going to need the full 40. And you can see you have quite a bit of juice in here left over from all those greens, and that makes for a delicious soup that we're going to add to that. So we'll be back in 40 minutes and I'll show you what it's going to look like. So our pot pie is baked, and we're serving that with a side of ginger apple carrots, and that is delicious and ready to eat. Enjoy.